Your name is William Wallace, and you are about to die the most agonizing death ever devised by human cruelty. It's the morning of August 23rd, 1305. The Tower of London is cold, damp, and unforgiving. Your body has long since stopped feeling like your own. The iron shackles have gnawed into your wrists for weeks, slicing through flesh until the wounds refuse to close. Infection burns through you, but the greater fire hasn't even started yet. From your narrow window, you hear a sound that chills the soul more than the chains on your body: laughter. Not the laughter of friends or children at play, but the kind that rises from a crowd gathering for blood. 20,000 Englishmen are outside, swelling the fields near Smithfield like an army of vultures circling a corpse. They're not here for justice. They're here for theater, for the most elaborate, most savage public spectacle London has ever staged. And the star of the show is you. Vendors cry out as if this were a fairground. Meat pies, roasted fowl, ale, enough refreshments to keep the crowd fed while your body is dismantled piece by piece. Parents lift their children onto shoulders, whispering that they'll see the rebel gutted alive today. The thought of your pain is entertainment. The promise of your screams is worth the journey. And worst of all, the executioner has already visited your cell. He leaned down, his voice calm and precise, describing step by step what he will do to you, how long each stage will last, where he will cut first, how he will keep you breathing long enough to see your own intestines burn. He promises you will remain awake through most of it. He says it with pride, as though he were an artist and your body his canvas. You close your eyes. You think of Scotland, the green hills of Ayrshire, where you once rode free, the crisp air at Stirling Bridge, where you and your ragtag force humiliated England's knights, the face of your wife, murdered by English soldiers, the wound that turned you from farmer into warrior. But these memories feel like shadows, slipping away. What remains is the knowledge that in less than 4 hours, your name will be dragged through London, your organs pulled from your body, your limbs scattered to the corners of Britain. This isn't execution. This is annihilation. And make no mistake, this was the plan. King Edward I, Longshanks, didn't just want you dead. He wanted you unmade. He wanted Scotland's greatest rebel recast as England's greatest warning. Your death wasn't designed for the grave, it was designed for history. And yet, here's the part no film, no history book quite tells you. The real story is even darker than the legend, more brutal than Hollywood could ever show. Even English chroniclers, hardened by war and numb to violence, struggled to describe the scene. Some simply called it the worst public execution in living memory. And that's exactly why you need to hear it. Because Wallace's death wasn't a single act of cruelty. It was a 4-hour play, written in blood, designed to terrorize an entire nation into obedience. But before Smithfield, before the screams, before the knives, came betrayal. Not at the hands of the English, but from Wallace's own countrymen. The betrayal by 1305, Scotland was exhausted. Decades of war had bled the land dry. Nobles who once shouted freedom now whispered deals in dark corners. One by one, the Scottish lords bent the knee to Edward. They traded independence for English gold, for titles, for the safety of their lands. But Wallace would not yield. His very existence mocked their cowardice. And nothing enrages a coward more than the sight of someone still standing. Enter Sir John Menteith, a Scottish knight who had sold his honor for survival. To him, Wallace wasn't just a rebel. He was a daily reminder of everything Menteith had surrendered. The bounty on Wallace's head was enormous, enough silver to buy a castle. But for Menteith, it wasn't just about the reward. It was personal. In August 1305, near Glasgow, the trap was set. Wallace was weary. Years of guerrilla warfare had left him hollow-eyed, constantly moving, running out of safe havens. When Menteith extended an invitation to meet with supposed allies, Wallace believed him, believed for once that Scotland still held some loyalty. He was wrong. English soldiers burst from the shadows, chains ready, not just any chains, specially forged, thick enough to restrain a man known for brute strength. Wallace fought. He bled, but exhaustion betrayed him as surely as Menteith did. Dragged to the ground, wrists shackled, bloodied and bruised, Scotland's symbol of defiance was caged. Edward had been hunting this moment for 8 years, and now, finally, Wallace was his. But here's the cruel genius of it. Edward didn't want Wallace dead on the spot. No, A sword to the neck would make him a martyr. Instead, Edward wanted him alive. Alive long enough to be paraded, humiliated, and then destroyed in front of as many eyes as possible. The stage was being built, and Wallace was about to become the unwilling lead actor. The long road south, the journey from Scotland to London, wasn't transport, it was torture, a moving exhibition. Wallace was locked in restraints, deliberately engineered to deny comfort. He couldn't sit, he couldn't lie flat. The chains cut into his wrists and ankles until his hands swelled grotesquely, purple and useless. Each jolt of the cart seared through bone and muscle, but the pain wasn't the worst of it. The humiliation was in every English town along the way. Wallace was displayed like an exotic beast caught in the wild. Crowds jeered, farmers spat, children hurled stones while their parents called him a savage, a traitor, an animal. Guards mocked him, narrating to each village what horrors awaited him in London, savoring his impending destruction as if retelling a ghost story around a fire. First Chronicler wrote of these displays with chilling casualness, describing Wallace, his humiliation in the same tone he'd used to describe cattle being driven to market. This was psychological warfare, a rehearsal for the final act. By the time Wallace finally reached the Tower of London, 3 weeks of degradation had ground his body down. His eyes, though, told a different story. English witnesses noted the strange hollowness there, not despair, but defiance. His spirit remained intact, and that, for Edward, was intolerable. Because a broken body could be displayed as a warning, but a spirit unbroken? That risked turning execution into martyrdom, which is why Edward ordered something worse than death, something designed not just to kill William Wallace, but to undo him. And on that August morning, as 20,000 gathered at Smithfield, the curtain was about to rise. The Tower of London is behind you now, but you are not walking to your death. No, that would be far too merciful. You are dragged at dawn, August 23rd, 1305. Guards storm into your cell. They strip you naked, binding your raw wrists and ankles. A wooden hurdle, a kind of low, flat sledge, waits outside the gates. It isn't meant for comfort, it's meant for pain. The rough planks dig into your spine as ropes tighten across your chest and legs. Horses are harnessed at the front, their breath steaming in the chill morning air. These aren't ordinary workhorses. They've been specially trained to drag prisoners at just the right pace. Not too fast, or you'd die too soon. Not too slow, or the spectacle would lose momentum. You are lashed down, a living cargo, a trophy on display. The gates open, and the crowd roars. London has been awake for hours, buzzing with anticipation. This isn't just an execution, it's a festival. Parents hold children on their shoulders, not to protect them, but to make sure they don't miss the show. Vendors call out hot pies, roasted meat, cups of ale. The air smells of bread, sweat, and smoke, but underneath it all, it smells of you. The iron tang of blood already oozes from your wounds as the horses lurch forward. And then it begins. The dragging the hurdle screeches against cobblestone, rattling over every uneven stone, every crack in the road. London's streets were never smooth, but today they feel designed for torment. Each jolt smashes your bones against wood. Each corner slams your skull. Blood trickles, then pours, leaving a crimson trail for the crowd to follow like breadcrumbs of suffering. The route is deliberate, not the shortest distance, but the busiest. Edward wanted this parade to pass through London's busiest markets and squares. Every eye would see the Scottish rebel dragged like refuse through their capital. Every cheer, every insult, every stone thrown by a child would help transform William Wallace from man into monster, from hero into cautionary tale. You feel every cobblestone. Your body is rhythmically battered, the sound of flesh slamming against wood almost musical in its repetition. Chroniclers later described it as like a drumbeat marking the hours of your humiliation. And the crowd is intoxicated. They spit, they throw stones, they scream curses. Some laugh as your skin peels against the cobblestones. Children skip alongside, mimicking your gasps, turning your agony into a game. The guards encourage them. They hand out scraps of refuse, urging citizens to hurl it. They narrate your crimes like carnival barkers. This is the man who burned your villages. This is the beast who killed your fathers. This is what happens to traitors. And still you breathe. Still your eyes remain open. That detail matters. The English aren't simply killing you, they are performing your death. Every moan, every gasp, every grimace is part of the script. The worse you look, the more effective the story. But the more you endure, the more dangerous your memory becomes. That's why the pace is precise. The horses do not rush. They drag you just fast enough to keep the pain constant, just slow enough to preserve your life. The handlers are experts. This isn't their first show. They've dragged dozens of traders through these same streets, perfecting the choreography of suffering. The arrival hours later, you reach Smithfield. The open field is already jammed with people, over 20,000. By some accounts, a sea of faces stretching in every direction. The sound is deafening, cheering, jeering, the clatter of mugs, the bark of vendors selling food as though this were a tournament. In the center of the field, a wooden scaffold rises. It's not tall like a gallows. No, it's deliberately low. Low enough that even those at the edges can see your face contorted in agony. High enough, though, that every motion, every wound is visible. The scaffold is more than wood. It is a stage. The planks have been sanded smooth, not for your comfort, but so your blood will flow easily, staining the wood for the crowd's benefit. Buckets of water wait nearby to wash the surface clean between stages of torture. And at one corner, a carefully stacked pile of seasoned firewood smolders, ready to consume your organs. The fire has been prepared all morning to burn hot, bright, and visible from hundreds of feet away. Even the logistics have been perfected. Carpenters, blacksmiths, executioner's assistants, all have labored through the night to ensure that your death will run like a well-oiled machine. And then there is the executioner himself. His name was Master Robert, England's most infamous butcher. Not a soldier, not a judge, but an artisan of state-sponsored death. He is dressed in black, his tools gleaming in the sunlight, knives honed to surgical sharpness, hooks polished, ropes cut to precise length. His reputation alone terrifies men. He has executed traders before, but today will be his masterpiece. He inspects you clinically as you're dragged onto the scaffold. You are bruised, bloodied, torn open from the journey. Your body is weak, but your eyes still burn. And that, perhaps, unsettles him. Because Master Robert knows this isn't just about killing William Wallace, it's about breaking him, about performing his destruction in a way that makes rebellion unthinkable. The trial that wasn't before the execution begins. Edward gives one final flourish, a trial. At Westminster Hall, Wallace had stood before judges days earlier, but it was no trial. The charges were read in Latin, a language he did not speak. Treason, sacrilege, rebellion. Wallace answered in defiance, insisting he had never sworn loyalty to Edward and therefore could not be a traitor. His words fell on deaf ears. The verdict had been decided long before. The trial was pure theater, a rehearsal for the final act, and now that act begins. The ropes are readied. The crowd hushes in anticipation. They've seen executions before, but nothing like this. Today, they will watch a man dismantled slowly, deliberately, with every stage designed to maximize terror. And as the executioner steps forward, the first rope in his hand, you feel the sun on your battered skin. The roar of the crowd surrounds you, and you realize the truth. You are no longer a man. You are a symbol Edward wants to erase, a symbol Scotland will never forget. And the performance is only beginning. The crowd surges forward, 20,000 people pressing closer, eyes fixed on you. William Wallace, stripped, bound, and forced upright on the scaffold. The air is electric with anticipation, the kind of fever usually reserved for festivals, tournaments, or coronations. But this is no celebration of life. This is a celebration of death. The executioner steps forward, coiled rope in hand. He has measured its length with cold mathematics. Not too long, not too short. The knot is tied deliberately, positioned just so beneath your jaw. He knows exactly how to make you suffer. And then, with a cruel flourish, the rope tightens. The hanging, you are hoisted upward, the rope biting into your throat. The crowd cheers, erupting in savage joy. Your body convulses violently. Legs kick in empty air, jerking, straining, searching for solid ground that will never appear. The rope constricts, cutting off breath, crushing your windpipe. Your vision narrows. Black spots bloom before your eyes. The blood pounds in your skull like war drums. The English roar with laughter. To them, this isn't tragedy, it's comedy. Children point, mimicking your frantic kicks. Mothers explain that this is what happens to traitors. Fathers boast that they brought their sons to see their first real execution. Your face darkens, purple, swollen. The crowd watches in fascination, as if your suffering is entertainment choreographed for their pleasure. Contemporary witnesses said your screams weren't human. They weren't animal either. They were something in between, a raw tearing sound, like a soul being ripped from its body. The crowd, drunk on horror, went silent for moments, transfixed by that sound. A sound no one could forget. The executioner, Master Robert, watches your eyes carefully. His timing must be perfect. If he lets you hang too long, you'll die, robbing him of the performance. Too short, and you'll recover too quickly, ruining the pacing. He waits for the precise moment, when your eyes begin to roll, when your body slackens, when you are hovering on the razor edge between life and death. And then, with a slice of his knife, the rope is cut. You crash to the scaffold. Your body convulses violently as air floods your lungs again. You cough, retch, gasp, desperately clawing for life. The crowd cheers wildly, not because you survived, but because the show continues. This is not mercy. This is cruelty refined into science. The knife you have barely drawn 2 ragged breaths when Master Robert appears again. This time he holds not rope but steel, a long, gleaming knife sharpened with meticulous care. And now comes the part no man should endure. The executioner kneels beside you. He presses the blade against your stomach, just below the ribs. The crowd falls silent. Even children sense what comes next. And then, the cut, the knife carves downward, slicing through skin and muscle with sickening ease. A single, long incision, precise and deliberate. The sound is obscene, wet, and tearing. Chroniclers said it was louder than anyone expected, like fabric ripping, but deeper, more final. Your body arches in agony. A scream bursts from your throat, so primal it silences the entire field. The sound is unbearable, echoing across Smithfield like the toll of some infernal bell. People faint. Others cover their children's ears, though they brought them here to see exactly this. And then comes the real horror. The executioner's hands plunge inside. One by one, your organs are drawn out into the open. He holds them aloft for the crowd, as if presenting trophies. Each one glistens in the morning sun before being tossed into the fire prepared beside the scaffold. Your bowels, your liver, your lungs, all fed to the flames. The fire crackles and roars, smoke rising with the scent of burning flesh. The smell drifts over the crowd, mixing with roasted meat from vendors and the sourness of spilled ale. Some spectators gag, others cheer. Chroniclers wrote of the mingled reactions, fascination and revulsion intertwined. And still, impossibly, you remain alive. Your chest rises and falls, your eyes move, following the executioner's hands as your own body is destroyed before you. Every second is deliberate. Medieval medical knowledge was primitive, but executioners knew enough to avoid the largest arteries, prolonging consciousness for as long as possible. They wanted you awake to see, to watch your own essence, the very seat of your life consumed by fire. The symbolism is savage. In medieval theology, the bowels were thought to house compassion. The heart contained courage and defiance. By burning these organs while you watched, Edward's executioners weren't just killing you. They were symbolically erasing your virtues, mercy, bravery, loyalty, turning you from hero into nothingness. The crowd is divided. Some cheer wildly, thrilled by the spectacle of a man reduced to meat. Others stare in horror, pale and shaken. Even in an age when public torture was common, what they are seeing today is extreme. Some reports claimed you tried to speak. The words are lost to history, swallowed by the roar of the fire and the cries of the crowd. Some said you cursed your tormentors. Others swore you prayed. Perhaps you simply called to Scotland one last time. Whatever the truth, that attempt to speak, even as your body was torn apart, became legend. And still, you lived. Your resilience terrified the crowd almost as much as it fascinated them. You were supposed to be broken by now. You were supposed to beg, to collapse, to fade into death. But no matter what they cut, no matter what they burned, your spirit remained. And that is the danger of martyrdom. Because if you cannot be broken, then your story cannot be destroyed. And Edward's masterpiece of terror begins to wobble on its stage, The silence by the time the fire consumed enough of your body to leave you unrecognizable. The crowd had grown strangely hushed. The jeers had quieted. The laughter was gone. What remained was a stunned silence, punctuated only by your ragged breathing and the crackle of flames. They had come for entertainment. What they found was endurance beyond human imagination. And though you lay torn open, blood pooling, body desecrated, you still lived, which meant the performance wasn't over. Not yet. The fire hisses. The smell of burning flesh mingles with the acrid smoke, a haze that drifts over Smithfield. Your body has been gutted, your innards displayed like butcher's scraps, then fed into flames for all to see. Yet, somehow, you still breathe. Your chest rises in shallow heaves. Your eyes, hollow but awake, follow every movement. The crowd has grown uneasy. They expected terror. They expected begging. They expected William Wallace to crumble into a shattered husk of humanity. Instead, they see endurance, and that frightens them more than any rebellion. Master Robert, the executioner, knows the time has come. He has prolonged your agony with skill, keeping you alive for what felt like eternity. But he also knows the crowd is shifting. Their hunger for blood is starting to tip into something else. Respect, sympathy, even awe. That cannot be allowed. The beheading, he hefts the axe. It glitters in the sunlight, freshly sharpened. He positions it carefully against the nape of your neck. The crowd leans forward, breath caught in collective silence. After hours of torture, this is almost merciful. Almost. With a single blow, the blade falls. And finally, silence. The agony that has stretched across hours collapses into nothingness. The suffering is over. William Wallace is dead. But the performance is not. Master Robert grips your head by the hair, lifting it high for all to see. Blood drips from your severed neck, spattering across the boards. The crowd erupts again, not in horror, but in a roar of triumph. The head of Scotland's greatest rebel, dangling above Londoners like a trophy. The quartering, but England isn't done with you. Death isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new spectacle. Your body is hacked into 4 pieces, arms severed, legs taken, each section displayed to the roaring crowd like cuts of meat at market. Chroniclers noted the butchery was carried out with chilling efficiency, as though your corpse were no different from livestock. The pieces are packed in tar, preserved for long journeys north, each one destined for a different city in Scotland: Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling, Perth, towns where your name had stirred men to rebellion. There, your limbs will hang on spikes in marketplaces, silent warnings to every farmer, every smith, every noble who dares to dream of freedom. And your head? It is dipped in pitch, blackened, hardened, and mounted proudly above London Bridge, facing north toward Scotland. Every traveler entering the city will see it grinning down from its perch. Every Scot forced to pass beneath will feel the sting of humiliation. Edward Longshanks believed your dismemberment was the final word, that by scattering your body, he would scatter your legacy too. But he miscalculated. The legacy, what the English king created that day, was not the erasure of William Wallace, but his rebirth. Your mutilation horrified even those meant to be impressed. Chroniclers across Europe recoiled at the details. French and Italian writers described the execution as evidence of English barbarity, cruelty so excessive it bordered on madness. Instead of securing Edward's dominance, it stained his name with infamy. And in Scotland, your suffering became legend. The brutality meant to erase your memory ensured it could never die. Children whispered your name as bedtime tales. Farmers sang ballads of the man who refused to kneel. Nobles who had once abandoned you now looked back in shame, recognizing that endurance, in the face of torture, carried more honor than survival under submission. Even Robert the Bruce, future King of Scotland, was said to have been shaken by what he witnessed. The sheer cruelty of Edward's spectacle convinced him that no peace could exist under English rule, that only total independence could restore Scottish dignity. Wallace's death lit the fire that Bruce would later fan into a national rebellion. And the people, the ordinary Scots, the peasants and craftsmen, they carried your story like scripture. Edward had meant your screams to silence them. Instead, they echoed for generations. The miscalculation here lies the cruel irony. Edward believed fear was stronger than hope, that 4 hours of systematic torture could erase a lifetime of resistance, that breaking one man could break a nation. but he misunderstood something fundamental. Terror can silence men for a moment, but dignity in suffering speaks louder than any king's decree. Your endurance turned pain into prophecy, your agony into a banner. The very act meant to humiliate you ensured you would be remembered not as a traitor, but as a martyr. The execution designed to unmake William Wallace became the cornerstone of Scottish identity. The aftermath: for years, your head remained above London Bridge, blackened and decaying, until storms and scavengers finally took it. Your quarters withered on spikes in Scottish towns, rotting reminders of Edward's power. But the memory of your death lived longer than iron or tar. It whispered in taverns, it echoed in sermons, it haunted English soldiers in Scotland who found rebels fighting with the cry of Wallace on their lips. Even centuries later, your suffering continued to inspire. Poets wrote of your torment, casting you as the eternal rebel. Songs carried your name across borders. Historians documented your agony not to glorify Edward's cruelty, but to honor your endurance. And when Scotland finally rose again, when victories were won and independence claimed, your shadow was there, standing tall in memory. The English destroyed your body, but in doing so, they made your spirit indestructible. The final echo: imagine Smithfield now. The scaffold is gone, the blood long washed away. London's noise has drowned out the screams of that August morning. But if you stand there at dawn, when the fog is thick and the air is still, some say you can still hear it. The rope creaking, the fire crackling, a crowd of 20,000 gasping as a man refuses to break. And in that echo, William Wallace still speaks. He speaks of freedom, of sacrifice, of the unbearable price of dignity, and why some pay it willingly. Because in the end, Edward's cruelty bought only one thing: immortality for the man he tried to erase. And Wallace, in dying, won the only victory that mattered.